If I were to bring an image to mind of Selena, I'd picture her during her successful reign in the 1990s. I can see her wearing one of her many iconic outfits while performing in front of the adulation of thousands of fans. Selena during the early stages of her career is not very likely to cross my mind. Before making this video, I'd say that I feel like I'm looking at a completely different person. Perhaps one reason I feel this way is due to the time skip that occurs in the 1997 biographical film, where her life transitions from her childhood to early adulthood. What hasn't been said about Selena? Her career has been extensively covered. However, I feel her formative years are still a bit of a mystery. At the time of this recording, the Netflix series has yet to be released, so I took it upon myself to listen to her early discography in order to fill that void. These albums ultimately led to her contract with EMI Latin, which ignited her meteoric rise to becoming one of Tejano's most beloved superstars. In this video, we're going to uncover Selena's journey prior to becoming the powerhouse that dominated the Latin charts, the trailblazer that helped clear prejudice against women, and the sensation known as the Queen of Tejano. Before we begin, I'm going to assume that we've all seen the 1997 film and are familiar with Abraham's early career as a musician.
They're madder than a bunch of hornets. What y'all do anyway?
Same. We belong together.
Let's set the stage and get to their first record as swiftly as possible. Now that Abraham's days as a musician were behind him, he earned his livelihood by working at Dow Chemical in Lake Jackson. He quit his job shortly after opening up a restaurant in 1980, where he performed with all three of his children. 17-year-old Abby played the bass guitar, 13-year-old Dulce played the drums, and 9-year-old Selena was a vocalist. Additional members included Ronnie Pyatt on electric guitar and Rena Dearman on keyboards. The restaurant wasn't open very long due to an economic recession that forced him to close it down. The family settled in Abraham's hometown of Corpus Christi and turned to music for salvation. Due to the hardships he faced in the 1950s, Abraham knew there was more money to be made in Spanish music rather than in English music. If the group was going to find any success in show business, he had to start teaching Selena the language, who by this point had some experience singing in Spanish. There are recordings dating back to the late 1970s, but we're gonna start off with some of the earliest singles that were pressed. Most of these were recorded with Freddie and Cara Records, two labels we'll expand on later in this video. Some of these are Spanish adaptations of English songs, such as Super Freak by Rick James, Sweet Dreams by Patsy Cline, and You Needed Me by Anne Murray. Let's zero in on a track named La Tracalera, a song written by Johnny Herrera, one of Abraham's mentors from his days as a musician. Los Dinos performed the song on the Domingo show when Selena was about 11 years old. For this incarnation of the group, we have Del Ballant on electric guitar and Mike Dean on keyboards, who later became a successful songwriter and producer in his own right. Abraham turned to his old acquaintance, Freddie Martinez, who owned Freddie Records in Corpus Christi. By the early 1980s, they were producing records for Ramon Ayala, Little Joy La Familia, and La Sombra. Los Dinos received an opportunity to record a full-length album, and production was to be overseen by Abraham and Freddie himself. This self-titled album closely resembles the formula that would come to follow, as it contains a mixed bag of Tejano and pop songs. It includes 3 tracks written by Abraham, one of them being the soulful doo-wop track, Gimme One More Chance, and one song written by A.B., Call Me, which borrows elements from Land of a Thousand Dances by Wilson Pickett. The remainder of the album is made up of songs written by accomplished musicians such as Juan Gabriel, Juan Calderón, and Camilo Sesto. Despite the group's utmost professionalism, the album was shelved after its completion in 1984.
We recorded one album with Freddie Records, and of course it was never released because nobody knew who a 9-year-old girl was at that time. But that album sold quite a lot after her death. That's when they put it out, they released it.
Ultimately, a single was released, but it failed to gain any traction. Two of its songs were part of a compilation album released by Freddie Records. On the back of that record, there's an excerpt that reads, "A group with a promising future, with Selena's charming voice, a star that will shine all over Texas." So if Freddie felt the group was poised for success, then why wasn't this album released? According to their engineer, Rick Longoria, it was too early in their career for Freddie to fully invest in them. After all, there were limits to what Woman in Tejano could accomplish. Tejano had its own niche market in Texas, where the genre was born. The sound is a melting pot of traditional Mexican folk, polka, and country music. The 1980s saw the rise of Tejano music, and by the 1990s, it reached popularity levels that exceeded the state's barriers.
Now therefore do I, as mayor of our city, in recognition thereof, hereby proclaim March 1st through 31st, 1987, the month of March to be Tejano Music Month in San Antonio, Texas.
The appeal of Mexican-American music is growing internationally. Woo! It's about time!
The landscape was dominated by male artists such as David Lee Garza, Emilio Navaira, and Ramiro Herrera.
Hi, I'm Patsy Torres, and I'm a San Antonian, and I'm proud to be part of the Tejano music industry. When I was growing up, I heard everything from country to jazz, to conjunto music, to rock and roll. And I guess this Tejano sound they're talking about really captures the spirit and the soul of our people and our community. We're unique. Our music style is unique.
Woman in Tejano was rare, but not unheard of. We won't dive too deep into the early history of the genre, but even into the 1970s, women continued to break through glass ceilings. Just to name a few accolades, Lisa Lopez was the first female Tejano singer to appear on Billboard's top Latin albums. Elsa Garcia became the first female to produce her own music, and Patsy Torres became the first female to expose Tejano overseas. Laura Canales is another artist that deserves to be highlighted. Before Selena was crowned the Queen of Tejano, Laura was the genre's top female attraction. She was actually signed to Freddie Records while Selena was recording her debut album. So going back to where we left off, having a charming voice that will shine all over Texas is one thing, but entering the Tejano market at their current state is another. Try telling that to Abraham, who was determined to turn all of their unrealized potential into reality. We can say the same for Selena, whose initial failure to connect with audiences sparked the ambitious nature that we all came to love.
La música tejana fue un poquito difícil para nosotros porque naturalmente soy mujer. Mi papá tenía muchos problemas de tener shows o presentaciones porque la razón fue porque hay muchos hombres que no piensan que la mujer puede agarrar a la gente o al público así como un hombre, pero wrong.
It took years and a lot of work and a lot of heartaches and a lot of pain, but I was a determined person. And the more barriers that I ran into, the more determined that I became.
Abraham knocked on the doors of Bob Grever, one of the driving forces behind the distribution of Tejano music. He was the owner of Cara Records, located in San Antonio, which produced records for La Mafia, Maz, and Quemado. Los Dinos recorded a Spanish adaptation of Lulu's 1967 hit, Tu Sir, With Love. And Oh Mama, a song that performed so well in radio stations, it caught the attention of Johnny Canales. Johnny was the host of the Johnny Canales Show, a popular program that featured both established and up-and-coming artists.
Eran blancos, ¿no? So, sí, naturalmente.
We splattered it with fluorescent paint, permanent paint, fluorescent paint.
Okay, y la gente que nos está escuchando en México, ¿cómo saben qué hicieron?
Los pintaron.
Now with the single in rotation, they entered the world of mainstream Tejano. At the 1985 Tejano Music Awards, Selena was nominated for the Female Vocalist of the Year award.
Nominees for the Female Vocalist of the Year: Laura Canales,
Selena Quintanilla,
Patsy Torres.
Laura Canales was victorious, making this her 4th consecutive win.
My name is Manny Guerra. Up until the end of 1984, I was a musical producer for Mas, La Mafia, and many other Texas groups.
Abraham was approached by Manny Guerra, who announced he was ending his tenure with Cara Records. Manny had a resume extending back to the 1970s as a former member of Sonny and the Sunliners. By the early 1980s, he left another indelible mark in the industry as a producer. He managed to get Abraham released from Cara Records, and the new album was underway under his own label, Guerra Productions. 1986 saw the release of Alpha. Johnny Herrera, who wrote La Tracalera, made his return for this album and provided 2 songs for the group. One of those tracks was Con Esta Copa, a song recorded by the original Dinos back in 1964. For this album and going forward, AB was responsible for writing original material. Therefore, he was determined to conquer unique sounds to go along with it. Sometime within the last 2 years, he recruited guitarist Roger Garcia and keyboardist and songwriter Ricky Vela.
This is Ricky Vela on keyboards.
¿De dónde es Ricky?
Ricky is from Corpus Christi, right around the corner from us. He lives right next to us.
AB and Ricky sparked a radical partnership that took over the creative direction of the group. This album is notable for having 6 songs written between them, including the lead single, Dame un beso. The song won radio stations over and earned them the industry's nod of approval. AB continued to build credibility in the eyes of songwriters, and Ricky proved to be a valuable asset, becoming a permanent fixture to the sound of Los Dinos. Ricky would go on to write an impressive array of songs, such as Si La Quieres and No Me Queda Más. At the 1986 Tejano Music Awards, Selena was nominated for both the Female Vocalist and Female Entertainer of the Year award. Laura Canales won both awards, but it's possible that Selena won in a different category. On the upside, Los Dinos found their home at Guerra Productions, and another album was released that same year, Munequito de Trapo. AB and Ricky's presence on this album is remarkably low. It contains mostly covers or songs written by other artists, such as Juan Barron, Tomás Mendez, and Daniela Romo. One of the notable tracks is a cover of Jimmy Charles' 1960 hit, A Million to One. This marks the first appearance of an English track under Guerra Productions. Even though recording music in Spanish was her focus, crossing over to the English market was always her goal.
That was always the dream. We started, what a lot of people don't know is that we started out playing English music first. We were playing Eagles and playing Doobie Brothers and playing just your all soft rock, I guess you could call it, and playing a little bit of Journey, Boston. I mean, we started out playing English music first.
By 1987, the grueling days between the road and the studio finally paid off. Selena won her first Female Vocalist of the Year award, knocking Laura Canales off her throne.
First of all, I'd like to say thank you to all you people in Texas that have supported us, Selena y Los Dinos. También I'd like to thank our producer, Manny Guerra from GP Productions, who's helped us out a whole lot. And most of all, I'd like to say thank you to Grupo Los Dinos, because without them, I don't think I'd be anybody. And when I win, they win. And when they lose, I don't know them. Thank you.
In honor of the trophy, their next album was named, and the winner is... Selena's salsa-flavored cover of La Bamba soared onto the Billboard Latin charts. The song was popularized by the late Richie Valens, who saw a resurgence in popularity after a biographical film was released that same year. Los Dinos continued to tour as the award cemented their status as a must-see commodity. This is a period where I personally believe the group began to flourish musically. While listening to this album, I didn't feel myself focusing too much on the creative direction of the music and enjoyed the overall experience. Even watching Selena on stage felt mesmerizing. Her stage presence and natural dancing abilities were beginning to work together to create the electrifying performer we know today. Behind the scenes, a new album was in the works. In 1988, Preciosa was released and received universal praise. You may notice that they switched to a label named Record Producer, but they continued to work under Manny's wing. Roger Garcia was temporarily replaced by Jesse Ibarra.
On guitar, tenemos Jesse Ibarra. Un aplauso, por favor.
Roger wouldn't make his return until Selena in 1989. The album contains the most original material out of the entire Manny Guerra discography. One of the covers included, Cien Años, is a song popularized by Pedro Infante in the early 1950s. At the 1988 Tejano Music Awards, Terco Corazon received the nomination for Single of the Year. Additionally, A.B. was nominated for Songwriter of the Year. They both lost in their categories, but Selena won her first Female Entertainer of the Year award, along with the Female Vocalist of the Year award.
I'm so relieved. I was sweating it out, I tell you. Well, you know, it all started when I was no, I'm just joking. First of all, I'd like to thank all the people who supported Selena y Los Dinos throughout the years. And I'd like to thank Mom and Dad, because without them I wouldn't be here right now. Thank you so much. I love you. And I also like to thank our producer, Manny Guerra, and RP Productions for producing us. Also, Grupo Los Dinos, thank you so much. My brother Branquitania for writing the songs, who have helped us out and made the group known. Thank you so much. I love you, San Antonio!
Los Dinos returned to the studio and started production on their final album with record producer, Dulce Amor. Some of the album highlights include a cover of Costumbres, which is regarded as the album's crown jewel for many fans. Tu Solamente Tu, a song previously recorded with Freddie Records, was revisited for this album. and an English track, Always Mine, which was remixed for the 1998 compilation album, Anthology. Some important additions were made to the group during this time frame. Singer-songwriter Perez Astudillo and keyboardist Ojeda were performing together at a venue when they crossed paths with Los Dinos for the first time.
I remember Abraham and AB walking towards us and asking us if we wanted to go on tour with them as an opening band for Selena.
When we joined the band, I mean, even though they were popular in the town that we were from, they were struggling. They were a struggling band. So we didn't walk into a glamorous job here. But honest to God, we were just happy to be there. And it would really overshadow the hardships of the road.
Pete and Joe made their first appearance on Selena in 1989. Aside from his songwriting contributions, Pete served as Selena's male counterpart when recording duets, such as Amame Quiereme and Yo Te Amo.
We had the other keyboard player, which would be Joe Ojeda, who was more the street guy that was born and raised, you know, right on the other side of the Mexican border, right here in Laredo, Texas. And, you know, he's the Baila Esta Cumbia riff on the keys and the La Carcacha guy, you know. And you put those two together, you have a sound.
Pete left the group in 1993 in order to pursue a solo career.
Y pues hemos tenido la oportunidad de trabajar con ese hombre y pues nosotros nos sentimos un poquito tristes porque ya te vas con su nuevo grupo, pero queremos desear todo lo bueno con su nuevo grupo.
Don Shelton and Freddie Correa would go on to replace him as their backup vocalists. By 1989, major record labels were beginning to capitalize on Latin music by signing its biggest names. Capital EMI launched EMI Latin and selected Jose Bejar to spearhead the operation.
Mario Ruiz and I were at the convention center in San Antonio, and we were on our way out. And all of a sudden, this performer came out, and the place just went crazy. It just lit up, and the people were so excited. So we decided to check it out. And of course, it was Selena, and we were blown away by her performance to the extent that we really had to meet her that night.
Selena was awarded the Female Vocalist and Female Entertainer of the Year award.
You're spoiling me, but I like it.
Well, Capital EMI was there and Coca-Cola was there. And due to that show that we done that night, I got the Coca-Cola contract and the Capital EMI contract.
Her sponsorship with Coca-Cola came with an unprecedented caveat: the opportunity for a woman in Tejano to be the face of a global brand. At the time, if you were a Tejano artist and wanted to be tied to a company, beer sponsorships are right up your alley. Selena held that bottle like it was a medal of honor, knowing full well she was representing Hispanics, Mexicans, and Latinos all over America.
One of the issues that I had to confront is I came to the realization that the world wanted to see Selena and not Los Dinos. No disrespect to Los Dinos, you know, that was her band till the very end. But the world internationally, they wanted Selena.
Now, with the corporate machine behind them, there were potential changes in the horizon. For their first release with EMI, the name Los Dinos was excluded from the front cover, but continued to appear elsewhere. The name ultimately got phased out for future album releases. Additionally, AB's role as a producer was in jeopardy after EMI made plans to replace him with a Grammy Award-winning producer.
I had always produced the albums. It was kind of a little scary because the record company was taking a big gamble on opening a Latin division, and they didn't want me to produce the album. So it was a little bit of a fight there, and we stuck together as a family, and Selena and Dad were real passionate and said, you know what, no, we got to give AB the chance to do it. If he can't do it, then, you know, we'll get somebody else to do it. So it was very scary, not only for myself, but I believe for Suzette, my dad, Selena, everybody, because, I mean, this is a huge label, and we really, at this point, we couldn't afford to take a failure, because if we failed at it, we'd end up back at the bottom of the totem pole.
Ultimately, the group remained intact and continued to work as a unit. Before we reach our conclusion, let's talk about the addition of Chris Perez. Chris met Los Dinos in 1989 while rehearsing with his band that included Shelly Lares, one of Selena's contemporaries.
He came up to me and he went to one of our rehearsals, and I think that's when he heard me. So then that night he invited us to go watch them at Rosedale Park. And after the show, he walks over to where I'm at and we go talk in private, and, and he asked me if I would consider coming to play with him, and I said yeah.
After joining the group, EMI ordered a compilation album in order to reintroduce Selena's old hits to the public. Chris participated in the production of this album, making this his first appearance in 1990. Before the release of Ven Conmigo, Chris was replaced by Mike Orozco, but later rejoined in 1991. That same year, a relationship sparked between Chris and Selena, which led to another departure from the group. He rejoined after their marriage in 1992. Chris was a key component in the group's plan to achieve a commercial pop rock sound. You can hear his rock influence in songs like Ya No and Fotos y Recuerdos. Selena went on to release 3 more studio albums between 1990 and 1994, Ven Conmigo, Entra Mi Mundo, and Amor Prohibido. With each album release, they continued to climb their way through the ranks of the music industry.
After she won the Grammy, we started performing in Mexico a lot. In that aspect, it opened the door to let other Latinos know that there's this other type of music called, Tejano music. And she brought it to the forefront.
When we signed up with Capitol EMI Records, I told the president of EMI Latin, Jose Bejar, that I wanted him to put a clause in the contract that he would help Selena cross over into the mainstream market.
Despite signing a contract that would help her cross over to the English market, it would take years before any plans were set into motion. Selena recorded material to demonstrate her potential in the mainstream market, but EMI chairman Charles Koppelman felt she needed to establish a larger fan base first. In the meantime, and the plan all along, was for Selena to kick off her career internationally. After a Grammy nomination in 1993, Selena continued to prove she was a force to be reckoned with. A contract was signed with SBK Records, and the crossover album was underway, or so they thought.
One day we're eating Thai food across the street from Capitol Records. In the middle of the meal, she starts to cry. And she said, Jose, I've told half the world that I got an English record coming, and there is no English record. And she was right, and it really upset me.
It continued to get delayed, and after months of emotional turmoil for Selena, production started in late 1994, with a release scheduled for the following year.
A lot of good things have been happening, and the English album is still coming out. I know we've been talking about forever and ever. Hace como cuántos años? 3 años? 3 años. And it's finally happening, gracias a Dios, y también las disqueras de nosotros, todo está pasando muy bien.
The album fit the perfect mold for the R&B market at the time and was destined to have an immeasurable impact. However, her tragic death in 1995 prevented her from seeing the release of the album, posthumously titled Dreaming of You.
We sold 4 times platinum, 4 million records. You don't sell 4 million records because you passed away. You might sell 500,000 records, but you don't sell 4 million records. She sold 4 million records because she struck a nerve through her music. It had a huge impact. It woke everybody up.
What was to come next for Selena remains a question for the ages, as it continues to haunt the public's imagination 25 years after her death. She could have been catapulted into new territory with the likes of Gloria Estefan, Whitney Houston, and Mariah Carey. Selena's journey to EMI was a daunting obstacle to overcome. I'm aware that I listed album highlights for the most part, but they had their fair share of detractors, and not all of these albums were released to major fanfare. Los Dinos continued despite the adversities they faced, and accomplished everything that was once considered an unthinkable stretch for a woman in Tejano.
And it also goes out to all the people that said a female could never make it in this business. This goes out to y'all.
What's more, they reinvigorated the landscape and set a template for future Latin acts to follow. The fact that she never gave up is one of these qualities that makes her so appealing and accessible to the public. She is indisputable proof that anything and everything is possible, no matter your age, gender, or the color of your skin.
And I feel that, if you have a dream, don't let anybody take it away. And you always believe that the impossible is always possible.
I personally cannot wait to see what the Netflix series has in store for us. Like I mentioned earlier, I focused mainly on album highlights, so there's still much more to learn about what went on behind the music. The series is set to be released on December 4th, so it should be here before we know it. That's all I have for today. Thanks for sticking around, and until next time, thanks for watching.
Bass.